Ooh, hello. Hi, friends. Welcome to another monthly reading wrap up. Today we're talking about April. I don't know what day it is, what month it is. I have a bit of a dilemma because, let me confirm, looking at my list, yeah, there was an unfortunate and disturbing pattern with every single book I read this month, except for our last two and a half. So the majority of my reviews are going to sound exactly the same. I have one big old problem with every single book that I read. And I read 12 across genre, authors I love, authors that are brand new to me. So just buckle up, but I promise at the very end, I have a couple that saved the day. And I really have a lot of faith in what May is going to look like because I had to tear myself away from the book that I'm currently reading in order to sit down and film this video. So good things ahead. Other reasons why I have high expectations for May is because I got a package and I'm going to let another version of me introduce it to you. Oh, hey. A big shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is Book of the Month. I got two books that are so highly anticipated. I didn't even notice the edges. I'm so excited. Let me tell you about the Book of the Month book subscription service. One low controlled price. You get newly released hardcover copies of books across all genres that their team combs through all the new releases, picks the best. They've picked some of my favorite books. Comes in a cool little box. Also, if you use the code FLORAL for May, you will not only get your first book for $5, but you will also get your choice of a cute little mini tote. I got Unreliable Narrator. Okay. What did I pick? So within the box is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. I talked about this at length in my highly anticipated Fantasies of 2026 video. This is, I think, a little bit more sci-fi, but it is an epic science fiction like only Fonda Lee can write, set in a world where money trumps loyalty, the elite have the power to extend life or end it, and one woman in the twilight of her calling must decide what's ultimately worth living or dying for. Yes. And then my next one, look at the edges, first of all. Seek a Trader's Son. Thank you so much, Book of the Month. Thank you so much. Funny story. This is by Veronica Roth, who famously wrote Divergent. I've never read Divergent, but I've read so many of her other books and I really love them. This one, I believe, is like an enemies to lovers situation. The daughter of a bounty hunter, the knight sworn to protect her, the prophecy that destroys their lives. Fate isn't something Elegy had ever thought about, but now it's a hand wrapped around her throat. So excited. So, Book of the Month, once again, amazing service, giving me so many of my favorite books. Use my code FLORAL. Maybe we'll have matching totes. So thank you as always to Book of the Month, and I will pass you back to me before I had these books in my hand. So yeah, that actually reminds me, I can cancel my hold. I got Seek the Trader's Son on hold at the library. 2 people beat me to it, so I'm technically third in line. But who's ever at the San Diego County Library, you just moved a slot up in the holds list. So yeah, thank you again so much to Book of the Month, code FLORAL to get your first book and free mini tote for $5. Okay, we're gonna dive in, and honestly, let me take a sip of my coffee first. I'm sorry to the microphone. The very first book really hurts me, and I think that this will really hit for some people. This just was not the book for me. This wasn't bad per se. None of these books, across the board, one book was bad. But overall, like, I feel like there's an audience for every single one of these books. Honest to God, there's no hate in my heart for any of these books. But this one just hurt because it's by Sebastian, and I didn't enjoy Starshipped. What a way to start the month. I think I technically read this the very last day of March. So it's been a while, but so unfortunate. So Starshipped follows our main 2 characters who are actors on a long-running kind of cult classic sci-fi show where they are not explicitly written to be in love, but there are definitely some undertones. There's an entire fandom shipping them, etc. But these 2 actors hate each other. Because on one hand, we have the kind of buttoned up, serious, doesn't like to laugh, doesn't really get along with most people kind of actor. And then we have his co-star who maybe has a bit of a record. He's a little bit sloppy. On his first season, he was dealing with some substance abuse. So they've just never really gotten along. They openly hate each other. And it's been like 7, if not 9, I think 7 years that they have known each other. For reasons that unfold in our story, they decide that they are going to fake friendship, and this is the longest time that they've ever actually spent with each other outside, even though they're like neighbors, which I found really funny. They like have not really spent time with each other outside of filming. They kind of slowly creep into each other's lives. They take road trips. One of the characters' dogs has decided that he likes the other character, so that's a green flag. Man, I think it was a real combination of things for me. The first being that these are people who have known each other for 7 years and they're like just deciding to be friends. And I didn't really understand the relationship dynamic, I guess, how they could go from being like somehow strangers that have known each other for 7 years and then they're falling in love. We're also mainly in one character's POV, and he is dealing with some pretty severe, what we discover to be OCD. The book really became about that, and I didn't particularly like our main character. He was kind of an asshole. Even our other love interest wasn't he wasn't like a contrast to him. He was definitely more social and outgoing and he could connect with other people, but he wasn't like, it wasn't kind of like the Grumpy and Sunshine dynamic. It was just kind of two people who were a little bit miserable in different ways. And really, more than it being about the romance or their relationship, it really became more about our main character's struggle with his OCD. It just wasn't what I was expecting it to be, especially from Sebastian. I was expecting it to be funnier, but they really just like made fun of each other in ways that I didn't find to be funny. I was really bummed out. Honestly, my favorite parts of it were the like fan forum. There's like a Discord where they talk about our two main characters. I think it was really just a mistake of expectations. I went in expecting like a typical Sebastian romance, because even with After Hours at Dooryard Books, which was one of my favorite books from last year by her, she managed to tell a love story, but it almost felt like the romance took a tiny step back and there was a larger plot at play. This one felt like that as well, but I didn't like either element. I didn't like the kind of romance almost subplot, and I also didn't want to be on, I believe his name was Simon. I didn't really want to be on Simon's journey. I really didn't enjoy him as a person. So unfortunately I didn't like it, and I was shocked. I kept pushing myself to read it. It took me forever to get through because I was like, there's no way I'm not enjoying a Sebastian book. What do you mean? I thought there were some elements that I liked. I liked his dog. I liked Simon's roommate / ex-boyfriend. I liked when they would talk about previous episodes, because I love a book about a different piece of media that doesn't exist. So talking about this sci-fi show was really fun. And I actually liked a lot of their co-stars, like their co-workers, other actors. But unfortunately, I just didn't get the chemistry between them, and I didn't. Such a bummer. So that is Starshipped by Sebastian. Not a good way to start April. After that, I read another highly anticipated read, and I think this was highly anticipated for like all viewers of this channel, and that is The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. This is a fantasy in a historical setting. I talked about it briefly on my Instagram already, so you might know what's coming, but I adored the first 50% of this book. We are dealing with a interesting timeline. I actually really liked how they told the story. We are dealing with a man who 20 years prior had been fighting this mythical beast. It's based off of, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation again, it is the beast of Gévaudan, I think it is, which is like a French piece of folklore. It's kind of an urban legend. Something was killing people, livestock, etc. in France in the 1700s. People saw it and said it was a big ass beast. So We don't know. But in this book, it is a kind of mythical creature. We thought we took care of it 20 years ago, but suddenly a man shows up at his house and is like, hey, so my family has a contract that you are supposed to work for us until the beast is slain. And hey, the beast is back. So you got to come back and fulfill your contract, basically. So our main character, our professor, travels back with this man to help this village again. And so the story is told from our main character's own mouth to the man who has collected him as they're traveling back. So that's always kind of fun when like you feel like you're reading the story and then another character interrupts and is like, wait, go back. Like, that's not how I heard it when my dad told me this story, you know? So I really enjoyed that. There's also, there may or may not be another entity living in our main character's head. So he has a lot of like internal conversations with this being. So that's kind of how we flash between the present time and 20 years ago. We also have a flashback to like the 1400s and Joan of Arc. To be quite honest, I did not enjoy that section. I enjoyed it at the beginning, and then again, once we hit the 50% mark, I did not. This had so much that I loved. I loved the historical setting. I liked the writing style. I thought that the characters, and again, like having another consciousness in your brain, I love that. That's kind of what I talked about on Instagram, is it had all of the elements of things that I love. And then something happened at 50% and it fell apart. There is also this romantic thread throughout where we know that our main character left that town 20 years ago on bad terms with someone named Antoine, someone who he loves very dearly, someone who is the father of the man who came to collect our main character, right? So it's 20 years have passed. Somehow this man has had a son, okay? I did not like Antoine. Antoine was a wet blanket. The pacing was just a little strange. Like I thought it was going to be my favorite book of the year, like honestly perfect, the first 50%. And then from 50 to probably 80%, I was bored to tears. And then the very end, so much happened. I wish that the second half was different because the first half was so good and it really let me down. So let me know your thoughts, because I know a lot of you had a similar experience with me, but I hope that some of you liked it. It has a 4-star rating on Goodreads right now. Let me know your thoughts. Also, this is apparently going to become a series. I am interested in continuing it because I did like basically our two main characters sharing one body. That's the Red Winter. Let me know your thoughts. Very happy to have read the first 50%, but where did the story go? But after that, I did read a book that was thoroughly entertaining, but I left it rather confused. This is a stage set for villains. I thought that this was such a cool premise. It is a magic system based around theater. So there are like normal people, and then there are these kind of immortal people who are called players, and they are the ones with magic, and all of their magic is related, like I said, to theater. So like mimicry or creating illusions or things like that. For reasons unknown, which is my main issue with this book, is that there is a severe lack of world building. So we don't know why, but these players are bad. It is not good. Like the kingdom has been divided into people who are allowed to see the theater and those that are not. And in the north, where plays and the theater and these players are forbidden, like lying, even for normal people without magic, is, I don't know if it's illegal, but definitely frowned upon. Like, so there's no lying. You can't be seen being interested in the playhouse or the players or anything like that. And that becomes a really big problem when one day the playhouse, which is a magical structure that can just like pop up everywhere, kind of reminded me of like Howl's Moving Castle. Like you could just spin the dial and go somewhere. So the playhouse just like pops up one day and is like, hey, we're holding auditions. We're looking for a new player. Come on in. But our story revolves around our main character who, when she was very young, she was going to get a blessing, and like everyone in the Northern Kingdom gets this blessing where they become like immune to magic or something like that. And as she's waiting in line to get it, she gets attacked by a player, and like the player touches her or something, and ever since then she's been very sick. The way she's described, she like looks like a corpse. She's just gray and like hollowed out, and nobody wants to be around her because she just looks like a zombie. And she is convinced that it is because of some curse that the player placed upon her. So when she sees that they're holding auditions, she decides this is her one chance to sneak into the playhouse, and find a cure for whatever is ailing her, right? And of course, she gets wrapped up into the player's world. She's forced to audition. She uncovers a lot of secrets about the magic and her life and the kingdom, so on and so forth. Oh, man. I was so entertained. Let me just say that. This was so readable. It felt like those YA novels that, like, when I was a young adult reading YA and I could just eat a book up in a single day. This is essentially what I did. I think I actually read this in a day. I was on like a couple long bus rides. I devoured it. Did I understand anything about the magic system or the world? No. This was compared to the Night Circus, and I agree in the sense that it's about the theater and you do not have any idea what's going on. But, and I say this about the Night Circus as well, the like romance element, the relationship between our two main characters was so good that I had to finish the book. Regardless of, I don't know why people can't go to the theater. What's wrong with that? I thought that our villain was a little bit dumb. I didn't understand anything about the world. Let's just say that. And it technically, the ending, the kind of reveal is something that I typically don't like in books, but somehow I pushed through. It worked in this case. And I was just really interested in our two main characters. I thought that the banter was great. I thought that our main male character, Jude, for reason I can't back this up with any evidence, but he reminded me a lot of Jax from Caraval or Once Upon a Broken Heart. So this wasn't a perfect book. I think it could be really frustrating. I think if the two main characters weren't so fun to read, I would have been immensely frustrated with this book, but it had enough holding it together that I was willing to go on the ride with it. And it was just entertaining. It lost me a little bit in like the second, third, but the ending was cool. That is a stage set for villains. And then what's quite interesting is the next book that I read, I feel like a stage set for villains really impacted my experience with this book because they had a similar magic system. I read The Lies That Summon the Night. I have read a few books by this author before, and she did like a series of fairy tale retellings, and I had fun. I think she did one like Beauty and the Beast one, and I had a good time. So I went in with medium to high hopes, and unfortunately this one fell flat, and it didn't really have the silly entertaining aspect of it that a stage set for villains did to save it. But the magic system is similar, that lying and like art and performance is illegal and contains magic. So our main character is an artist. She started small as a kid, telling stories, and it eventually got her in so much trouble that she has to work in these kind of like almost cabaret-esque places where everyone performs a different art. And she is a seamstress, and so she does a lot of like fabric art. She will almost like a puppet show kind of thing. Anyway, doesn't really matter. The reason that storytelling and lies and sins are illegal is because for some reason that the act of creating fiction or fantasy summons something called shades, and they're like these weird shadow entities that cause harm. And our main girl is offered a job working with a kind of bounty hunter or a shade hunter because he needs someone who is able to do art, who is able to call shades close to him so that he can then capture them and kill them and contain them, whatever, right? So she and two of her other artist friends are roped into working with this dude. And for some reason, we assume that they're enemies. It's supposed to be an enemies to lovers kind of situation. I didn't really get it. And unfortunately, this was romantasy in the sense that romance came before anything, including world building, plot, etc. So a lot of the plot, it was just very clear that the story was being told so that we would get into steamy situations. So it didn't feel like a fantasy where we were going on an adventure and we were going to like uncover these mysteries and solve things or whatever. It really just felt like, oh, we're gonna push this wagon off a cliff so that they have to sleep in a tent together or something, like it just felt very calculated to make romantic situations instead of telling a good story. So for me, it fell very flat. I didn't like our characters, and nothing really happened. It was one of those things where they just like roamed around in a wagon and got into steamy situations. That was a bummer. So that is The Lies That Summon the Night. I didn't DNF it though, so that's a plus. But yeah, it didn't really do anything for me, unfortunately. After that, I picked up The Devil of the Deep because once the weather starts getting warmer, I want to read about pirates. I want to read about mermaids, and this had both. So The Devil of the Deep is a pirate, mermaid, Haitian folklore inspired story. We're following mainly 3 different points of view. One is a pirate who used to work for the fleet or the military of this kingdom, and now she spends her time sinking fleet ships. We follow a mermaid whose life has just been kind of thrown apart because of a lot of political shenanigans going on under the sea. And then we have a member of the fleet who might have had a history with our pirate and is searching for a object that a certain mermaid might be in possession of. And so naturally all 3 of them are drawn together. And this was another book where I really liked the first 50% and then I just couldn't quite handle the pacing of it because the writing style of this could work for a lot of people, but unfortunately for me, it felt like as they were writing this book, they took out anything that wasn't action and moving the plot forward. So we didn't sit with the characters for a lot of the time. It was just like they did this, then they did this, then they did this, then they did this. And it was just a constant movement forward of the plot. I felt like we had the most time with Lou, our fleet soldier. We learn more about like their background and the people around them that love them and things like that. But for everyone else, it just kind of felt like we were go, go, go. So I felt a little detached, but I thought that especially the underwater world was so cool. And for a debut, this was really strong. It's a unique way of writing. I think maybe it isn't for me, but I loved that it was a voice that was clearly her own. So I do recommend it. I would just say, like, if you are the kind of person who likes to spend a lot of time getting to know the characters, because I'm much more of a character-driven reader. This one just like left me wanting more. She gave us like just enough of the characters to be like, wait, stop. I want to know more about our pirate princess, you know? But if you're a plot-driven person and you are looking for a pirate, mermaid, crazy hell of a time, The Devil of the Deep, I think it was a really strong debut. Just wasn't necessarily my style, but excited to see what she writes next. Next up is a complicated one. Let me know if you've read this. I haven't heard about it from a lot of people. This is The Prince Without Sorrow. First of all, beautiful cover. This was so bizarre. It felt like 2 different books. We're following 2 main characters. One is a witch who are persecuted in this kingdom. They have to be hidden. And our story starts when, unfortunately, her aunt, I believe, is not hidden and is burnt at the stake. So she runs off and eventually crosses paths with the prince of this kingdom, who is from page 1 immediately against the persecution of these witches. His family is pretty violent and scary. His mom is just kind of like not even there. She's kind of checked out. But he is very much like, I want to use my power for good in some way to stop. Like this is wrong. What we're doing is wrong. So it's very odd because they meet up and then immediately separate again and go on like 2 separate quests. So it really felt like we were reading 2 different books. I think that our prince was a little bit too perfect, a little too goody two-shoes. Like he would make a mistake and then immediately like learn his lesson and correct it. Like he never made a significantly wrong step, and that almost like that's great, but it almost made it boring to read because you knew, and it did, everything worked out for him. And same a bit with our witch, like, oh, I need to get in contact with the secret head of the rebellion, and then like she stumbles upon them in the woods and they're like, oh yeah, I happen to be the head of the rebellion. Hi, were you looking for me? So it was very readable and I liked the characters, but there wasn't enough tension, which is weird because one of them is like, if she gets caught at any point, she'll be burnt at the stake. So you'd feel like there should be tension. Everything just happened a little too easily. And again, it felt like 2 separate books. I think the second one could be good because I wanted more of the kind of creepy, crazy characters, like the prince's sister, who is bloodthirsty and maybe a narcissist and a little scary. I wanted to know more about her. So the second one could be better, but I also think that this needed a better editor. I really think that this book got screwed over by whoever edited it because there were so many bizarre issues with the language. I thought I was crazy, so I went through and looked at the reviews, and someone actually made a list of all of them. The one that really stuck out to me is they were trying to describe like a tree spirit, and they said something about like, instead of saying like a round puffy head over a round puffy body, they said a round puffy body over a round puffy head. So like, was the spirit upside down? I don't think so. It wasn't it didn't seem to be upside down. Like, there were just so many really strange language issues. And I really think that that should have been caught by an editor. If it was caught so easily by myself and others, that's an issue. So I'm hoping that for the second one, not only do we find our main characters working together more, so it feels less like two different books, and I also want them to find a different editor. I believe this is going to be a trilogy. I'm bummed because I was interested in the world. Like, the witches are so interesting. That's one thing I actually liked about our main character. The witches are sworn to a life of being pacifists. So even if someone harms them, they can't strike back, and they're supposed to use their powers only for good and peaceful activities, right? Like helping something grow or whatever. But our main character is really angry and hellbent on revenge, and she is not a pacifist. And so I really liked that about her, that she was like, no, we are being hunted to death. I'm going to be pissed off and I'm going to throw some punches and like, you know. So again, like, there were so many great things, but unfortunately it just was not tied together correctly. I really, really think that this was an editing issue. I would definitely be willing to read more of what this author writes, but I think that this could have been worked on just a little bit more and been a great book. But instead, I'm just left a little meh. So that is The Prince Without Sorrow. After that, I posted a video ranking all the fantasy books that I had read so far this year, and I had mentioned that I've been kind of struggling with fantasy and connecting with a lot of the books that I've read, and somebody recommended a book by N.K. Jemisin, Queen of Fantasy. I know, and I dove in. And my relationship with N.K. Jemisin is I have only read The City We Became, and that is so different than anything else she's ever written. It's like about people become different boroughs of New York. So you have like a person who is Manhattan, and you have a person who is the Bronx. And I just remember there was a lot of New Jersey slander that I didn't like. So N.K. Jemisin and I have a little bit of beef, but I decided to read The 100,000 Kingdoms. And what the hell did I read? So I believe this was recommended to me because I love books about gods being imperfect or maybe a little evil. And this one, well, yeah. How do I even describe what is going on in this book? To be quite honest, I don't even think that I know, but I had a great time. We're following our main character, who is the daughter of the Princess of the Sky. No, this is so bad. Our main character is the daughter of a princess who gave up her spot as the sole heir to the throne because she wanted to marry her husband, the king of a lower kingdom, whatever, okay? So she's not the heir to the throne anymore. But problems arise when the current emperor king needs an heir, and without his daughter there, he needs to pick from the next generation, and that includes our main character. And then she has two cousins who are up in the running, and so they're going to have a competition to find out who is going to be the heir. And we quickly realize that this competition is a sham. We are fully expecting our main character to die, but she doesn't. And I can be completely honest with you, I don't even know how the competition technically works. She's trying to like ally. No, I'm not even going to go into it. But within the palace, we have the royals and the upper echelon of society, right? But we also have a group of some rather curious characters, which are gods or the children of gods. Basically, this world had three gods, the god of the sun and the night and the dusk/dawn. Because of reasons that will be explained in the book, these gods and their children, or particularly one god and his children, are basically servants or prisoners to the royal family. And our main character, of course, gets roped up in a diabolical scheme that they have, and I really loved them. There's particularly one god who, even though he's immortal, he acts like a child. I thought that he was so endearing but also scary and bizarre. I felt like I was very lost a lot of the time while reading this book, but I really enjoyed the writing style. I really liked our main character as well. She was just sort of like not ready to die. Was her whole MO. She was like, I don't really know what's going on. I don't really like anyone here, but I don't want to die. And I also love my kingdom that I left behind. So I'm going to make sure that I stay alive and my country stays alive, and like whatever the hell I have to do to get through that, I will. I would say don't read this book for action. This book felt like we were just slowly unraveling the lore of this world, really understanding who the characters actually are, what the true story of the world as we know it really is. I heard someone say when I posted that I was reading this and then I liked it, a lot of people said that the second book in this series is like life-changing. So I am interested in continuing it, but this was a book that I needed to focus on. I needed to just kind of let go of the reins and be taken for the ride because a lot of it was confusing, but I'm glad that I stuck with it. But yeah, if you're interested in gods and mythology and the drama that comes with that, I think you might really enjoy The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. And then I dove into my sci-fi era. I read Slow Gods, and this was another one that I really, really loved. It is broken up into 4 parts. I will say, loved parts 1, 2, and 4. Part 3, I could have done without. Part 3 could have been a lot shorter. What do you think the universe would do if it received a message from a kind of all-knowing being that 2 stars are going to collide in a few centuries and everyone in this solar system is gonna die? What would you do? As like leader of a planet, what actions would you take? That is kind of the starting point of our novel, is that we know at some point in time these 2 stars are going to collide and just decimate everything in a certain amount of light years radius. So as that goes on in the background, we're following our main character who, a series of unfortunate events, leads him to becoming a pilot on a spaceship, which sounds fun until you realize that pilots normally can only fly like 1 or 2 journeys because they turn to mush. They go insane. You basically have to like connect your brain to the ship. There's just some kind of darkness that makes people, like the pilot, makes the crew go insane, basically, or just disappear. The darkness just eats them. So being a pilot is not cool. But what's very strange about our main character is that the darkness doesn't seem to bother him. Darkness doesn't seem to bother his ship. After his first flight, he comes back changed, not quite human, you might say. So while he is technically shunned by society because he's clearly this other scary thing, he is at the center of so many major events because he can fly the damn plane, you know? So we follow him throughout his life that spans centuries. There is a bit of romance that I actually really liked. He is in charge with helping evacuate not the people, but like artifacts from one of the planets that's going to be like the first to go in the like blast radius, you know? So talking about like, how do you evacuate billions of people from a planet that you know is going to explode in a couple years and things like that. Yeah, I really, really liked it. I just think that the 3rd part was a little slow. I loved how the story was told. Our character is speaking directly to us a lot of the time. And I loved all the other characters. I had a really, really good time with this one. And I thought that the ending was frustrating, but was good. Yeah, overall, I actually really had a good time with this. That is Slow Gods. Right after that, I was still in my sci-fi era, so I picked up the Stardust Grail. This actually eventually had a lot of similarities to Slow Gods. I think they're just themes that are popular in sci-fi in general, but this one I felt like was a consistently fun pace, where I felt like Slow Gods was super strong in 3 of the 4 parts. This one felt pretty strong consistently, if that makes sense. So I think I had a better time reading Slow Gods. Like, that story will likely stick with me more, but the Stardust Grail held my attention and entertained me in a consistent way, if that makes any sense. I also love that a lot of this takes place, of all places, in New Jersey. The Stardust Grail, how can I describe this? Our main character was born and lived off-world. We are in the far future, but she has come to Earth to study, to finish her master's at Princeton University, and she has this not-so-secret obsession with something called the Stardust Grail. Basically, at some point, we discovered how to travel through kind of black holes. We call them nodes. You can get to the far reaches of the universe through these little, like, tiny connected black hole-esque things, right? The problem is these nodes are disappearing, while to me, a earthling that does not have access to a world outside of my own yet, for the world in the future that has a connection with many worlds, the idea of suddenly being cut off, not being able to do intergalactic travel anymore, is really horrifying. And so our main character gets wrapped up in a plan to try and find this one object that is supposed to help create nodes. And so the fact that we don't have these anymore, for reasons that will be explained, we believe that that is why the nodes are dying. The issue is this item has different uses, and one of those might be helping her best friend, who is a different being. I kind of honestly pictured her as like a giant flubber, but pink. Her best friend is from an alien race that is dying because this particular object, while it also can make travel possible, also helps her aliens reproduce. And so her alien friend's entire species is dying. So she goes on this quest, and when she finds the item, the question is, will she find it, and what will she do with it? Will she give it to the universe, or will she give it to her friend and her friend's people? This was fun. I loved our main character. I thought she was a hoot. I loved our side characters as well. We end up picking up some people to help us on our quest. One in particular is a robot that all he wants to do is feel. His goal in life is to one day feel joy, because he like is constantly changing his programming to try and have emotions like a real person. It's very cute. Anyway, this got confusing, but it was just like a consistently fun time. It was pretty quick. I think it was a relatively short book as well. So if you are interested in a sci-fi book that starts off in good old New Jersey, that is the Stardust Grail. Next up, this is one that I made a video about because I was so excited about it. And that you learn lessons every day. And my lesson that I learned is to not talk about a book before I get more than 50% of the way through, because this was a letdown, but it started off so good. This is the Gravewood. I already talked about it on my Instagram, comparing it to Holly Black's The Coldest Girl in Cold Town. This is a book about vampires, a post-apocalyptic world, mainly taking place on the East Coast, starting in the woods of New Hampshire. This, I still say to the very end, this had such a nostalgic feel to it. Like, if I was a middle school student, like in the peak of my like Twilight obsession, I would have eaten this up. Even though it completely lost the plot by the end of it, this was just so early 2000s paranormal romance, like young adult paranormal romance to a T. So I will give it that. Like, if you are looking for some just nostalgia, this was so readable. It just had every trope of like the paranormal romances of that time. We had like this kind of love triangle going on, a girl that is supposed to be really special, but we never really know why she is special. She just is, kind of thing. Essentially, we're following our main character, who is deaf, as is our authors. I've really enjoyed Kelly Andrews' other work. And she usually has a character who is deaf. And so this character, even though it's a post-apocalyptic world, she is still relying on batteries for her hearing aid, especially because nobody in town speaks sign language. So she would be completely cut off from the world if she didn't have her batteries. And the only way that she can get those batteries is by trading in her blood to the head of the vampire gang. I can't describe that. Basically, government has collapsed. We're dealing with a lot of gangs run by vampires, okay? Our like teenage leader of the local gang, Lysander, gives her batteries and other supplies in exchange for her blood, okay? But when our main character's best friend goes missing, and then her brother comes back from the kind of military that they have at the time that like all men have to join. He comes back in order to hunt down his sister. They have to team up with the vampire, and our girl finds herself in the middle of two boys that love her. And what's a girl to do? This was, yeah, the first 20, if not 30%, golden. I felt like a teenager again. It was great. And then what happened? I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. This is going to be a duology because there's no way that, there's going to be a duology. Like I thought this was a standalone. There's no way with an ending like that. Don't read it for a plot is all I'm going to say. Read it if you want to truly feel like, oh my God, is it 2004? Am I sitting at my kitchen table eating Honey Nut Cheerios, reading Twilight for the 5th time? Yes, that is the Gravewood. Unfortunate. But it has value. It has value for really being a little time capsule. It took me back. So thank you so much for that. Let me know your thoughts if you've read it. I do appreciate, unless I missed it, unless I wasn't paying attention, because I do forget character names, I do appreciate that the Gravewood seems to be in a different world than her previous works. That's like one of my main complaints about Kelly Andrew, is that all of her books are secretly connected. Like the characters from her first book will show up in all of her other books. From what I remember, this was a separate world, and I at least appreciated that. Let me know your thoughts. Like I low-key, I feel like I am having fonder memories of it the more that I think back on it, just because of how transportive it was. That's the Gravewood. What an odd little time. But yeah, if you want some vampires and some like teenagers that are so in love that the world is just gonna end, you know, there she is. The Gravewood. 2 more. We're almost done. I picked up Butterfly Swords by Jeannie Lin. There's going to be some kind of like special edition romance collection coming out that has like Lord of Scoundrels and then Butterfly Swords, like all of the kind of leading ladies of historical romance, right? So I loved The Lotus Palace by Jeannie Lin. That was also a historical romance with a little bit of a murder mystery involved. So picking up Butterfly Swords, I was very excited. And you know, this had a great beginning. If you haven't watched, I had like a little bookish blog that I posted a couple weeks ago where I was reading it, and I had just started it, and I was just really excited to like get lost in a book. It was so good in the beginning that I had to like set timers to tell myself like, okay, you've been in this cafe for 2 hours, you need to leave. Like you have other things to do today. So that was really exciting. However, the ending was just very lackluster, I'm gonna be real, and this was very insta-lusty. I would recommend The Lotus Palace much, much, much more than Butterfly Swords, but if you're okay with like an insta-lust kind of meh, fizzled out ending, I would still try it because you know what? It was funny. Butterfly Swords is about a girl who, as she is on her way to get married, she is a princess in China under the Tang dynasty. She's on her way to get married when her and her like servants fake a kidnapping so that she can run away, because she has learned that the man she's about to be marrying may or may not have been behind killing one of her brothers, and she's not about to marry this man. So she runs off disguised as a man and accidentally crosses paths with our other main character, who I think he's supposed to be Roman, but at some point they call him a Turk. Either way, he's a blonde man. In the middle of China, he's just like this blonde-haired, blue-eyed man. They end up crossing paths when she is ambushed by a bunch of soldiers and he steps in to help. And then she ends up turning around and attacking him as well because she doesn't trust anybody. So a real meet cute, okay? She kicks him in the balls, basically, is how they meet. When she realizes that he is actually trying to help her, they end up teaming up, and she tries to make her way from where she is all the way across back to the royal palace, and he just kind of sticks with her to protect her because he likes her, okay? So I thought like the first 50%, which is the theme of this month, unfortunately, the first 50% I had a really good time with, but once we got into like the alleged political intrigue of it all, it kind of fell apart for me. I did like the ending. I thought the ending was sweet, but also very convenient, but I do just like Jeannie Lin's writing style. It's also like quite funny. There's specifically one scene where our main character is like a pretty consistent like normal person until she suddenly gets jealous and she like becomes a totally different hilarious person. So I love how she writes characters, but unfortunately the plot for this one wasn't as strong as the Lotus Palace. So I would still give it a try. If you are in the mood for historical romance that is very lusty. That is Butterfly Swords. And then, oh, I have it. Okay. And then, so this reading month, now that I'm going over it, I guess I did have a bit more fun than I thought I did, but I was just there wasn't a book that was perfect and I had a really great time with it. So I decided to pick up a book that my friend had given me because she really enjoyed it and I had never heard of it before. This wasn't even on my radar. So I thought maybe this is a sign. I loved Minbach by Ella Lee. This is, a multi-generational story, which isn't usually my cup of tea, so high praise. We are following a grandmother, mother, and daughter. This takes place in the mid-80s in Incheon, South Korea. It also takes place in 2008 in London, England. How do I even go about this? In the 80s, we're dealing with the authoritarian regime of two different dictators, but we're also dealing with Christian missionaries. I believe he's Christian. My friend said they were Latter-day Saints. Anyway, we're dealing with foreign religious missionaries showing up in Korea because of economic issues. Our grandmother has to open a minbak, which is basically like a guest house, you could say. Someone is just opening their house, renting out their extra rooms, and the people who stay there will get 3 meals a day, etc. So what happens when some of the missionaries live in the guest house, kind of infiltrate the family a little bit, and then in England, what happens when, due to some family tragedies and the financial crisis of 2008, our mother figure, who was the daughter in the 80s, she now has to open a minbak in London. There's so much more to it than that, but I don't want to spoil it because there's one thing that happens that then sets the tone for the rest of the book and really is what this book is about. But to be honest, watching it unfold was the most interesting part. So I don't want to spoil it, but if you are interested in a really good family drama with a lot of history, and I just thought that the characters were explained very well. Like if a character, like for example, the mother is very distant and kind of like unloving towards her daughter, we see why. Like we are given such clear examples for why she acts the way that she acts. The same thing with the grandmother and how she treated the mother, her daughter. So I thought that these characters were so real. Even the daughter, just like a teenager in 2008, like she felt very real as well. I just believed all of this. My only critique is that near the end, we got a lot of POV switches and like quite a few new characters that were introduced. And I know why they were, but that was just like a little choppy. There were a lot of new names that we kind of are introduced to and then never hear from again. But that's literally my only complaint. I really enjoyed this book. I personally think it's a spoiler, but if you want to know more about like what this book is actually about, you can Google it. But I really recommend you just going into it looking to learn about Korean history. Yeah, I had a great time. I believe it's already out in the UK, but after I posted about, and obviously it's out in Korea, but when I posted about it, a lot of my American audience let me know that it's not coming out until 2027 in the US. So I'm really sorry about that. But if you can get your hands on it wherever you are, Minbach, really enjoyed it. Favorite book of the month, I would say. So thank you, Henny, for lending it to me. And last but not least, the 2 books that I'm working on right now. Like I said, I made a video a couple weeks ago about fantasy books, how they haven't really been hitting. And a lot of people were recommending that I go way back to the 2000s. I was recommended Robin McKinley, a lot of different books by her, but I ended up picking up Spindles End because it was available at my library. I'm currently 37% of the way through. This is a retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, but told through the eyes of the people who have rescued her. So we basically follow a fairy who has been invited from her teeny tiny village. The king and queen have decided that they're going to invite one person per village in the whole kingdom to the naming ceremony of their long-awaited, beloved, precious daughter, who has like 21 names, so I'm not going to say her name. She goes, she witnesses the evil fairy godmother cursing the baby to be like prick on her 21st birthday, prick her finger, she will fall asleep, whatever. Sleeping Beauty story. But in this case, one of the fairies living in the royal palace just takes the princess and hands her to our fairy and is like, hey, take care of her for me, hide her from the evil fairy godmother, and she just is sent on her merry way. So we watch as the princess is raised in this tiny town, not knowing that she's a princess, and basically all through the eyes of this fairy. And as I said, I'm 37% of the way through. So we literally just switched to our Sleeping Beauty character, Rosie. We just switched into her POV, which I think is going to be a lot more fun. The first 30%, and I say this with love, like this is low-key a compliment in the world of doom scrolling and you have like 2 seconds to grab people's attention, short form content, short attention span, etc. Reading this book felt the way that Uncle Colum from Dairy Girls speaks.
So it says to himself, says I, Colum, this is no day for a do.
What's happening?
For when the bride arrived, and as I say, by this stage the wind was fierce.
Am I dead?
I've never heard wind like it.
The sentences can be so long and meandering. And again, this isn't a complaint. It just was a different pacing than I'm used to. And it felt like a practice in slowing down my brain and being like, she doesn't need to get to the point. She wants to tell you about foxes and how they don't really get social cues. And so sometimes they often say things. They ask you questions that are a little too personal, but don't be offended. It's just how they are. Like, there was just so much. So I'm working my way through this slowly, but like I said, we just got into Rosie's POV, so I think the pacing might change, and I think it'll be a little bit more fun. But so far, so good. It hasn't pulled me in completely, but it's been a change of pace, and I at least appreciate that. And then the book that I had to pull myself away from, that I'm also currently reading, is The Last of Earth. I am 14% of the way through, which isn't much. I started this morning. I've only read 43 pages, so I'm talking about this prematurely, I know. But we are following a few different characters in the 1800s as they try to get into Tibet. Tibet is closed off to foreigners. So one of our main characters is like a white British captain who is allegedly trying to like create maps. Like he wants to map Tibet, and he also just wants to be a famous explorer. Like he wants his journals to be published and remembered by the world, whatever. So we're following him as well as his crew, and the leader of his crew, who are made up of locals. The leader of his crew has agreed to join this journey because one of his best friends went on a journey similar to this a few years ago and never came back. So he is trying to figure out what happened to his friend. And then on the other hand, we have a woman who is trying to get to a Buddhist monastery so that she can study with the monks, which is not allowed for women, but certainly not for women that are, she's definitely British and white. We are not sure who her mother is, but she is described so far as being able to pass as a local. So it's assumed that her mother might have been Indian, but we're also following her very perilous journey currently, trying to get into Tibet. And I don't know what else this could possibly be about. I've loved the writing style so far, and I'm intrigued, to say the least. There's like a mix of journals and letters as well, which I love. So that is The Last of Earth. Will likely be my first book I finish in May. So I will let you know how I feel next month. But yeah, that is what I read this month. It was a little hit or miss. But like I said, I feel like in May, I'm just going to be better about picking books. I feel like April, I had a lot of books that like I wanted to read because they were highly anticipated and they had like just come out. But I think now I just kind of want to be a little bit more intentional and a little more listening to my moods rather than listening to my library giving me my holds and pressuring me to read on time. So anyway, high hopes for the future. I also have a lot of like cute little trips. I'm going to be on a lot of trains and things like that. So a lot of good environments to read, and it's reading outside weather now. So yeah, looking forward to things as always, and hope you're doing well. Let me know what you've been reading, and thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this. Once again, I will have a link down below, but you can use the code FLORAL to get your first book for $5 with a mini tote. Yeah, thank you always to Book of the Month. So excited to read what I got. And yeah, thank you for your recommendations. A lot of these came directly from you guys recently, so keep them coming. And I will see you guys very soon. I need, if I go dark, if I go missing, I am trying to figure out when I can start filming the Cassandra Clare plot summaries. And those take me forever. So don't worry. If I'm gone, I'm likely just going crazy in my room, waving a wand at Julian Blackthorn. So there's no place I would rather be. So I'll see you guys next time, and love you always. Okay, bye.